Hi guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a pseudo recommendation video and talking about some of my favorite school settings in fantasy books. So the reason I'm calling this a pseudo recommendation is the 6 books I'm going to be talking about today are not necessarily all favorite books as a whole, but they all have some of my favorite school settings specifically. So some of these books are favorites, some of them I didn't enjoy as much as a whole. So it's kind of a whole range of books as a whole. But so these are 6 books that when I think of these books or these series, the parts that take place at these schools or the school itself is one of the main kind of memories or things that I associate with this book and really stick out as something as I enjoy. School setting has always been one of my favorite tropes in fantasy. I guess I'm just a major nerd and I always liked school all the way up through college. So I always just really liked reading about fantasy schools and how cool it would be to be in school but learning magic. And so these have been some of my favorite tropes. So I looked back to find my favorites. There's even more on my shelf I haven't read yet that I know have school settings, so maybe in a year I'll have even more school settings that I really enjoy. So this is not an exhaustive list of every school setting I've read, it's just the ones that I enjoyed the most. So, and in no particular order, first up is the Black Magician Trilogy by Trudy Canavan. Primarily, book 2, The Novice, is the main one I'll be talking about today. So this series as a whole follows Sonia, who is a poor peasant girl in this city, and in the first book it's discovered that she has magical powers, and so the staff of the Magic Academy in this city are trying to track her down and take her to this magic school in order to train her, because if she's left untrained, her magic could go literally wild and kill her or those around her. So they want to train her mostly as a preventative thing. In this world, the people who generally go to these schools are the wealthy patrons. They send their kids. And so in book 2, which is the one where she starts at the academy, she is definitely an odd person out. She doesn't make friends easily because everyone kind of just looks down on her as being a girl from the streets versus from all these rich families. And so this is a very much what I would consider a classic school setting. You know, they're being trained in magic, they have different tests and trials. It's very run-of-the-mill as far as the school itself, but I really enjoyed it. We watched Sonia go through the school, and she has the classic enemy student who's trying to make her life worse and frame her for doing things to get her kicked out of school. So we have kind of it's a very classic, what I would consider a classic kind of school story in a fantasy book, but this is one of my all-time favorite series, as I talked about in my favorite series video, and so I really liked it, and this is the thing that I think of the most when I think of this series, or one of the things, is book 2 in the school setting. And so I enjoyed it. There's also kind of an element in the school setting of the kind of headmaster character. It takes Sonia as like his mentee, and that in itself offers a lot of kind of intrigue and difficulties and mysterious aspects of the plot in the second one. So this is one of my favorites, both book and school settings. It's just a good classic magic school. So I definitely recommend this series, whether or not you like school settings or just as a good series. The second book I want to mention is the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher, specifically book 2, Academ's Fury. This series follows Tavi, our main character, who lives in a world where people bond with Furies, which are these elemental spirit type creatures, and he is past the age where people usually bond with one and has not yet bonded one, and so he's kind of an outcast because of that, and he really struggles with why he has not done that yet and why he can't do it. And so in book 2, he is sponsored by a wealthy patron to attend the finest school in Alera called the Academy to train to be a cursor, which publicly cursors are kind of messengers for the realm, but secretly, or somewhat secretly, as kind of like higher nobility of the realm know this, but not general knowledge, is that cursors are also assassins for the realm. And so while he's training to be a cursor, he is also trying to figure out how to bond his fury. And so this school also, from what I remember, is very much more of a kind of a stereotypical school like in the last book. But for me, when you take a series I really like Codex Alera, that's doing everything right for me, plot, characters, world, I love everything, and you just put kind of just a regular old school setting in, it's like, so good. That's like all I need. I don't even need it to be super unique if the rest of the book and story is working for me. I just love seeing characters I like in school settings. In this case, the school setting is trained to be assassins, which is a little bit more unique than just kind of general magic training. So I really like this one. The next series on this list is the Protector of the Small series by Tamara Pierce. This is a 4-book series following Trilogy, who is the first girl to go to night school after it has been officially decreed that girls are allowed to go. So she's the first girl, which means she's the only girl. And so this series, each book follows a year at the school. And so I quite like that format. That format definitely works better for young adult series in my opinion, because you're spending literally the whole series in their formative school years, whereas adult books, you tend to just have one book or only part of a book who does it. So this is definitely a little bit of a younger series because of that, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought the night school was fun. I thought following Trilogy as she overcomes the struggles and obstacles for her as being the only female to do it was really enjoyable. It's an older YA series that I definitely think stands the test of time, and it's really fun for its night training series. So the next series and school I want to talk about is the White Tower from the Wheel of Time. The White Tower is the school for the Aes Sedai in the Wheel of Time, which is kind of the magic users, all-female magic users in this world. And so the White Tower makes its first appearance as a setting in the second book, The Great Hunt, when some of our characters go there to become Aes Sedai. And this was always my favorite setting throughout the books. I've only read the first 7 Wheel of Time books. So take that with a grain of salt. I don't know how the White Tower appears in the second half, but from the first 7, the White Tower was always my favorite location to be in. I also like within the White Tower and Aes Sedai, the way they're organized kind of reminds me of like houses or something, where you have different ajas and they're each named after a color, and each one has a different focus for like what they do as full Aes Sedai, what they're studying, and I really like that. I love when I was in high school reading this, my friend and I always used to talk about which aja we'd be in, and so I really like the White Tower and kind of this training structure organization that Robert Jordan built in the White Tower. So the last 2 books on the list are both kind of alternative school settings, and so the first of those is the Percy Jackson series. So I call this one an alternative setting because technically it's a summer camp, not a school, but that would be Camp Half-Blood. I loved Camp Half-Blood. When I was middle and high school, I loved summer camp. I went to the same overnight summer camp every year for 11 years in total, first as a camper, then as kind of a counselor in training leadership program, and then as a counselor. And so I love summer camp, so Camp Half-Blood was awesome to me. I loved it so much. I always wanted to go there, as many kids do, I'm sure. But I thought it was really fun. The cabins, I loved how it's like you're still learning all these different kind of fighting skills, but there's like games involved, like the capture the flag or manhunt game they do in one of the books. So I thought Camp Half-Blood sounded like the most fun place I could go during the summer, and I always wish I could go for real. So Camp Half-Blood is definitely one of my favorite school settings. The last book I want to talk about is another kind of alternative school setting, and that is Anathem by Neil Stephenson. This book as a whole is not my favorite. I gave it a 3 stars. I had a lot of conflicting feelings on it, but the one thing that I loved about it was the first half of the book, which took place in this convent, where in this world the kind of convents are like the kind of like religious orders are all about math and science and philosophy instead of religion as we know it in our world. And these convents were created like thousands of years ago to be isolated from the outside influences, and so that way they could withstand the test of time. They wouldn't collapse with countries. They would always be there, and the avouts of these convents spend their times exploring and learning and researching math and science and philosophy and making kind of math and science advancements, even without the use of technology, which is something they also keep out as part of their keeping out of outside influences. And so I thought this setting was very cool. This kind of taking these math and science and like traditionally what our world views as very more the secular world and putting it in the lens of like what we would call like the religious environment of these isolated convents was very cool in my opinion. If that sounds cool and if you're someone that really likes philosophy, you should definitely read this book. It was very interesting, a very different take on this kind of learning atmosphere. And that is the one thing that really stuck out, and I still, like when I see this book on my shelf, that's what I think about, is the learning and the teaching that happened in this convent. So those are my 6 favorite school settings of the books I've read so far. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments. If you have any recommendations for school settings, I'm always open to more school setting recommendations because I love them and want to read all of them. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.